Is it okay for a woman to be angry? Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers,
We're therapists.
and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
What's up, Tyler? Brannon, how's it going, man?
It's going really well.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. You seem so calm today.
Yeah, I just got up early and hit the gym and was just feeling sluggish. So I don't know why. I'm just getting old. So, I went golfing and I hit a shot. It was like a 50-yard shot. This was a year ago, and I tweaked my wrist, and it still is injured.
From a year ago.
Yeah, just from a 50-yard little shot. Like, I don't,
You're getting old, man.
So I went golfing this weekend, and I can't hit it because every time I hit it, it hurts now. So I'm just like shots like left and right, and I just want to throw my club across the fairway.
I've seen that happen a time or two, I think.
Talk
already.
about anger.
Yeah.
I had a little anger as a kid.
I think we all did.
A bit of a temper,
Yeah.
Yes, and it would boil over between us sometimes, and that's when it got really crazy.
That's when it was three brothers, all with a little bit of a different fuse. Like that's a pretty volatile home life.
Yeah, it was fun though.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's kind of where I'm at, but just mad that I'm injured. But
yeah, bummer, man.
It's a Monday. Let's get the week going good. So,
Cool.
Luckily, we have a really good guest to start us off, and we have Laura with us today, and she's I think she's been on twice. Have you been on the podcast twice already?
Just once.
Just once? Okay. Maybe we've had your husband on a couple times. I can't remember. But Laura is also a therapist, and she has her own personal story of recovery and betrayal and recovery. And she is just a rock star in terms of her passion and her willingness to step into the arena, to understand her own recovery, to self-reflect, but also to help others. So she's full of wisdom. She's full of life experience. She's full of knowledge about all of this stuff. So she's an excellent guest on all fronts. So the topic we have today, I think, is something that is really interesting and something that I'm excited to dig in with. So, Laura, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's dive in. Let's dig into this. Can women be angry? That's an interesting question. Talk about that, Laura. Why that question? Tell us your story a little bit. Fill us in.
Yeah. So I think on a societal level, women aren't really allowed to be angry. Women are often classified as, over emotional or being crazy. And angry women is not something that we're really comfortable with or used to. And it's funny that you mentioned the other time that I was on the podcast, I was actually at a way different place, and that's fine. That was where I was at in my recovery and healing. But I remember coming on here and asking something like, what if my husband is a Mr. Nice Guy, but what if I'm a Mrs. Mean Girl?
I remember. Yeah.
And so I'm not there anymore. I've had my own journey with anger. But the reason why I came with that first time was because throughout my life, I've been called an angry person. I grew up in a very angry household with my dad. He's just an angry man constantly and overly critical and all of these things. And so I grew up a very angry person. I got called all these things. At one point, somebody even told me that anger was my addiction. And then healing after betrayal, I kind of took that on. And um, I kind of blamed myself in those ways for being angry or overly angry. And that's what the narrative I had when I came here that first time. And so yeah, I was trying to work on the behaviors on being less angry without really digging into what was going on. But at one point, I had a really transformative experience with anger, kind of like an IFS experience just on my own. So basically, whenever I found out about my husband's betrayal, I kept two journals. One journal, I would write everything that I was actually feeling, all my anger, my sadness, my rage. And then my other journal, I would write to him as my best friend because I missed him because we were separated at the time. And so later on in recovery, I wanted him to read that just to kind of understand what I was going through. And he was okay in his recovery to be able to handle that. So I let him read the really vulnerable journal, or I was going to let him read the really vulnerable journal. And the first pages of my journal were just anger, like rage, like the nastiest things that I could have come up with were in those first couple of pages. And after that entry was a really vulnerable entry, like, I miss you, we can make this work type of thing. And so as I was letting him read that, I let him read the first entry, and I was comfortable with that, because that was the angry me. And then the second entry was more vulnerable. And so in that moment, I realized, like, wow, anger has been protecting me this whole time. Like, it was protecting me then, and it's even protecting me now as I reveal this vulnerable part of me, because it's coming up first. Like, it comes up first. That's the very first thing that comes. And so I had this really profound experience with that. It's just seeing, like, my anger as, like, this beautiful part of me that is just protecting me. Like, she's been there all along. She's gets a little crazy sometimes, but and because this anger loves me, she comes and defends me. And I realized that that was a pattern in my whole life of, like, me feeling very unsafe and anger coming up first to defend me, to be there for me. And so that just really sat with me really deeply. And after that, I've just witnessed my anger so differently. I understand it now, and I love that part of me, because I think it's also the part of me that's passionate and part of me that gets me to act and do things. But because I understand it now, I don't unleash it. I just yeah, I've transformed it and I've harnessed it, I guess. And so that's my story with anger. And so yeah, I just wanted to talk about it and see how it can help women, especially after betrayal, with their anger, and then help them transform it.
That's awesome, Laura. Thank you. Thank you for being willing to come on and share your story. I remember your podcast from a long time ago. It was a long time ago. And I remember actually the discussion that we had. I think it was a great episode that was kind of along the same topics. I'm wondering, just to kind of clarify what you're saying, that you've always kind of felt stigmatized by the fact that you had this anger that would manifest itself in all of these different ways. And you even started to take it on as, like, almost like hating your anger, or feeling like you were a problem because you felt all of this anger, or because of the way that it manifested. And then it was only after you started to dive into understanding, validating, coming to know that anger, realizing that that anger was connected to a lot of other things in your life that really mattered, that were really important to you. That didn't even get rid of the anger. It helped you to understand it and channel it differently. That's what you're saying. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So go a little bit further into that, if you don't mind. Like, what other things did you find once you started to dig into it and get to know it, understand it, and actually love that part of yourself? What other parts was it connected to in terms of principles or values that it was actually doing its job to try to protect?
Mm-hmm. Um, well, for me, it was kind of in two parts. Like the first part of it was seeing it as a problem and hating that part of me. But at the same time, I think it was important that I took accountability for it and, took responsibility for how I was showing up defensive and, all these ways. But then that was just like kind of surface level. And so that's why I needed to go deeper, and that was that experience for me. And so, yeah, just seeing that anger showed up for me when I felt unsafe, and I had felt unsafe most of my life, just with these patterns that I mentioned of like being in this household where I was criticized literally all the time. And so
Mm-hmm.
I felt so unsafe. And then after betrayal, when I found out about the betrayal and afterwards, I felt really unsafe. And I was protecting so much of me. I was protecting my dignity. It was protecting my worth, my value, my sense of justice, my boundaries, and connecting to those things and being curious and wondering, okay, what is underneath this anger? Um, that was that was the work that helped me have compassion for it, and also be able to express that. Right, that's a whole nother step. And then in recovery after betrayal, I think it's also, if you're with your partner, for them to understand your anger, for them to also be able to do that and empathize and see what's underneath the anger. That's also a big piece of it.
It's interesting to hear you talk and with this like acceptance of it, which is amazing. But what I wonder is, like, if we were to back up just a little bit, like, what are messages that men get about anger that are different than women? Like, as men, we're told like that we're kind of built that way, right? Like, aggression or anger is kind of a part of being a man at times, and it's normalized more so for men, I think. And tell me if I'm off on this, but for women, there's an underlying message, and maybe you can speak to this, Laura, just a little bit. As a woman who has anger or has anger come up, like what are some messages that you've been taught about anger specifically?
Yeah, I think along the lines of like you're overreacting, you're being
Mm-hmm.
crazy, you're being too emotional, you're too sensitive. Um, just like calm down, this is too much. Instead of asking the questions of like, what is making you so unsafe or what is going
Yeah.
on, is just right into criticizing the outbursts, as where I think it is more normalized for men. It's anger is a thing that we're comfortable more comfortable seeing men
Mm-hmm.
express themselves in anger, but women not so much. Um,
Yeah. I wonder why, but there's this like, it's almost like they just mute women's feelings or emotions. And it's like, you're supposed to smile and be sweet. And, when things get hard, like just nurture the situation and be kind about, and like that takes the humanity out of being a woman. Like, and the reality is anger is very important for everybody, men and women. So like when there's that undertone, it's like, okay, I have these feelings inside of me, but I'm supposed to already self-reject those because I'm a woman and I'm not supposed to express them and I'm not supposed to show them. So like, and yet they're raging, like it's literal rage, right? It's anger. And so it's like, and it sounds like you've been willing to be like, I'm going to actually show them, like, right? Which is awesome. But it's interesting that social construct is there that I think connects shame to anger for women. Of I'm angry and I shouldn't be,
Mhm.
and therefore I'm bad if I'm angry. And I think it's important to call that out. And you're a great example, Laura. Instead of going the other direction of like, okay, I'll learn how to never be angry and smile and pretend like that's not in me. You've gone the other direction of like, no, I'm going to go like get to know this thing and like love her and see her and use her effectively in my life, right? So,
Mhm. Yeah, because I work with clients who have been betrayed, and I feel that anger within them, and they have it. But that self-rejection that you were talking about is like, yes, we have these messages in society, but then we internalize them and then we use them against ourselves. And like, I'm being crazy, I'm being too much. Like, this doesn't require this reaction. Like, why am I being so like emotional? And I hear women say these things like after they've been betrayed too. They're like, I guess I'm just really controlling, and I'm just being kind of crazy. And I'm like, are you? Or are you being hyper vigilant? Something
mm-hmm,
that's a normal symptom after experiencing trauma.
mm-hmm,
And they just get reinforced, and sometimes the person who did the betraying reinforces that as well, of like, you're just being crazy, you're just being controlling, um when the anger is a normal reaction to having your trust broken,
mm-hmm,
to a really unjust situation, to being some in a situation that you didn't sign up for, to having your heart broken, to having that much hurt. um but yeah, I think we just have a hard time seeing it that way.
mm-hmm,
I think Laura too, there's another layer to that when it comes to betrayal. So there's the fear of like I'm addicted to anger or you're crazy or you're this or the and there's that stigmatization that comes from other people, but it's also something that comes from the inside too of like and I think sometimes I wonder if like a betrayed spouse often feels so out of control from the inside too that the anger almost feels scary. Like what am I capable of doing if I actually don't check this? And so they often check it, they try to get rid of it, they try to deny it, they suppress it. And there's another layer that's not just the hypervigilance, but there's also when you've gone through something that's that traumatic and when it affects all of your hopes and dreams and your way of being in the world, there's a grieving process that goes along with it too. And I see a lot of people get stuck in the anger part of it because they refuse to see it. They refuse to allow it. They refuse to acknowledge it, whether it's because of their own fears of it or because of what they've been taught about it. But then it keeps them stuck in this kind of like holding pattern of things start churning from the inside and then it finds its way out sideways in other ways, maybe self-harmful behaviors or controlling behaviors or other things, or maybe the rage like finally goes over the top and then they regret what they've done with the anger. And instead of just learning to acknowledge this is part of a grieving process that my soul needs to go through because of what's happened in my relationship. And that acceptance sometimes isn't allowed because of how we see anger.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, anger is it's a stage of grief. Like, it is part of the grieving process, but it is ironic how, like, in denying and suppressing anger, you get stuck in anger. So because you're afraid of it and not willing to go there and confront it, you get stuck in that phase of grief. Although it's a normal part of grief.
Not only is it normal, it's actually very important um, to for that protection. It's interesting when you throw out to people like like give me an example of a good emotion, and they'll say happy, and give me an example of a bad emotion, and oftentimes the answer to that is anger. And the truth is emotions aren't good or bad; they just are. And but like anger has a function. There's a purpose to anger that's very important. And especially when we're talking about betrayal, like it's very important for protection. And I like what Tyler just said of like it's kind of tricky because if you don't want to feel anger, you need to allow yourself to feel anger,
And then
right?
you have to learn to trust yourself to not act in the anger in ways that's against your value.
Right. So you kind of harness that anger effectively. And that, Laura, your story about journaling and like figuring it out, like that's what you've sound like mastered. Like you've gotten really good at that. Because the truth is anger can lead to destruction. Like it can lead to things that you don't want to do or consequences that you don't want. That's true, right? But if you can harness it and allow yourself to feel it, then it's a part of the grieving process and it protects you. But if you don't allow yourself to feel it and you just smile, then you could get hurt. Like you're not allowing that protection to happen. So it's very important, especially with betrayal.
Could I ask you something, Laura, kind of back to your story? Just a little bit here. You said you've kept that journal. You kept both journals. It's like you had the real one, and then you had like the curated one that you were going to give, like, hey, these are still my feelings towards my best friend. So you're kind of trying to cultivate all of it. And then you said that you wanted him to read all of it. And I think I can't remember the exact language that you used, but it had something to do with being able to express your feelings, to be seen or to be witnessed, or it was something along those lines. Is that right?
Yes.
Like for him to be able to hear it and understand what your process was,
Yeah.
that was meaningful to you. Can you speak a little bit more to that process in terms of like why it was so important for your anger to be seen, maybe not just by you, but by your partner as you guys were healing?
I think um because it spoke to the pain. It was so big, and he felt it in the beginning, like the bigness of it and the intensity of it, because that was what came first for me for a long time. But at that point, um, we were in a different place, but I still wanted him to know how hurt I was through my anger. Um, how disappointed I was, how let down I was, how heartbroken I was in those moments, especially because in those moments I felt so alone. And that's part of the trauma, right? Like your world collapses and then you feel alone, especially when you're betrayed by the person who you trusted. Is It's such a complicated grief because the person who you trusted is the person who hurt you. And so it's a different kind of aloneness that you feel, like nowhere to go, nowhere to call home. Um, and so, yeah, I don't think he was ready to actually take those things in for a while until that point. Um, because before he would get defensive or he would shame spiral. Um, that was a big thing that he worked through. And so at that moment, I knew that I could share it safely. Um, well, I wasn't feeling that intensely, but that was still me. Like, past me was still me. Like, I still wanted to honor that part of myself. Um, but he got into a point where he could look underneath that anger and be like, wow, you were so hurt. Like, this was such a hard time for you. This was heartbreaking. Like, this is what you were feeling. And he was able to do that. And because of that, I was able to turn the page to the next section, which was like the more vulnerable part.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I miss you and we can work, um, on things and things like that. But yeah, it was really important for him to see that anger and to stand like strong and wanting to uncover what's under it instead of like shame spiraling.
Yeah. I like what you said there because that's been my experience. I don't know, Brannon, your take is on this or not, but it's been my experience that it doesn't always happen, and healing can and has to happen sometimes without a partner acknowledging that pain. But it seems to be the case for a betrayed spouse, especially even more so for a lot of the women that I work with, that the witness of that pain does really help in turning the page. And I think that that kind of goes into just like general relational things, even so, where when you look between like a husband and a wife's, if you were to ask them most of the time, what are the wife's top priorities in the relationship? You've said some of the words today, but safety, being seen and chosen and acknowledged, right? And then for the husband, a lot of times their biggest one is they want to feel like respected. They want to feel like they're showing up and able to provide or whatever else. And so your husband doing his recovery work was able to learn over time what empathy was, and then he was able to step in and provide that almost witness of all of those feelings are valid, right? And that made it easier to go, okay, number one, I can turn the page because those emotions have been validated. But number two, he's also now showing up in a way where there's actual safety for those feelings to be expressed. And that safety makes the anger not need to be there quite as much.
It's interesting, like, and I don't want to go off on this topic too far, but I just feel like we get relationships wrong so much. It's like relationships are about like we think it's about agreeing. We think it's about like, okay, yeah, you see me because you agree with me. And the reality is as humans, we have things that happen to us. We have triggers that come. And what we really need is to sit in them and process them. And when we sit in them and process them, and just hold space there, that's where we can really create connection with each other. And so, like, it's interesting with anger. If you think about anger, anger is a secondary emotion. It is a protection mechanism. But the emotion underneath is usually fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of getting hurt. And what you just said, Laura, is interesting, is when he was able to sit in that anger with you, allow you to process it, you were able to let go and find some relief from that anger and then open up about the real emotions that were there and sit and hand those over to him and talk about them and feel them, which creates like intimacy. It creates connection. So yeah, it's interesting with relationship. Like anger's interesting because a lot of times it does disconnect. A lot of times it pushes away, disconnects, and what we need with relationship is space and time. And then we can come back and say, I am angry. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I need. Help me understand what I need. I'm trying to figure that out. Versus like, I want to punch you in the face, right? Or yell at you or whatever. And so it's important to acknowledge within yourself, I'm angry, but then get clear with what do I need to process here? Like, what is my truth here before I just react to this feeling, right? So I don't know what you guys think about that, but
I think that's true, but I also think at least for me, it took a while to get there. Like at first, it was very raw and it was very like, I want to punch you in the face, like, um, and it was just so hard. Like it was so hard to get to a point where like I was curious about it. Um, and that's why I think like as women, like we need to believe ourselves. Because like when you were talking about triggers, I was thinking triggers were the way through for me. Like triggers were how I found healing, even though I hated them. But as they came up, once I started thinking of them as like, oh, this is a sign that there's still some pain here. But first I had to believe them. Like first I had to stop calling myself crazy and you're overreacting or this has nothing to do with that. Like it's fine now. He's not doing that thing anymore, blah, blah, blah. First I had to believe myself and be like, oh, like this is coming up for me for a reason. And
mhm.
and then express it. And then for him to do his work and be able to meet me there, like that took a while. But then again, like that was the way through.
I'm having a thought too with what you're saying, and Brandon, what your question was. we've said this on the show several times, but if you're viewing your partner that everything your partner does is either an act of love or a cry for help, then the response of whatever's showing up, whether that's sadness and devastation or anger and frustration, if it gets viewed through that lens by both partners, then the discussion can turn to more of, hey, I'm seeing a cry for help, or what, I'm really frustrated right now because I'm not being seen. Now it's like, oh, we can move towards that instead of like, you're crazy, or you shouldn't be showing those things, or anger is of the devil, or whatever else, because we get that all the time too. And just being able to see it from that broader perspective and allow room for it to be what it is, which is usually a cry for help or an act of love. The anger is usually a cry for help because something else is also connected to it that needs some attention. Could I broaden this out for a second? Maybe this is a whole different episode sometime, so shut me down if we need to. But thinking about just expression of emotions in general, when you look at it across the general population, there's a statistically significant difference in emotional expression between men and women, where women are much more emotionally expressive, except in the area of anger and aggression, where then men are the ones who are actually more expressive than women in that one area. And I wonder, what you guys' thoughts are on this, that it might be a societal type of thing. There's definitely going to be some societal factors, but I'm not sure that that's all of it. I wonder if there's a difference in the way that just masculinity and femininity typically just are built in the way that they work, and if that's part of this equation too. And I don't know what you guys think of that. I'm throwing it out there. What are your thoughts?
I have some thoughts. I'll let Laura take it first.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I definitely see the societal factors, but I guess as somebody who I've been identified with anger so much my whole life, I don't know that women like feel it less or anything like that. Like, um, so I don't know.
I'm
I
not sure it's a feeling thing as much as an expression thing. Like,
mm,
is it just a societal thing, or is it I'm thinking of like what you look at, sort of like typical types of things that you'd see. If you look at like the wise mind Venn diagram of like mindfulness, there's the emotional mind, which is there for intuition, connection, emotional identification, expressiveness. Emotions are a signal. They're motivators. They lead to action. And then you have like the rational mind, which is the logic, goal orientation, solutions, and typically those two things would be associated with the typical definitions of what feminine and masculine are, and that polarity that's there, right? And men are also known, the masculine, I should say masculine and not just men, but more men are masculine than women, and more women are feminine than men, right? So in that, when the masculine energy is goal oriented, it's more sort of like linear, it's known for being aggressive. It seems like it more naturally is easy to be expressed that way, whereas for feminine energy, that's more geared towards connection in relationships. Anger doesn't typically always feel like it's going to lead to connection, even though I think it does a lot when it's shared properly. It's also known for its nurturing, its intuition, it's all of those other things that you were talking about earlier. And it seems like it doesn't lend itself as easily, even though you feel those emotions.
I think I'm leaning toward it's societal, and like, and I know, and here my anecdotal evidence is that I have 2 boys and 2 girls, and raising two boys and 2 girls. My girls have as much anger and aggression as my boys. And it expresses differently. But I think my boys are given a bit more permission, um, you know, to fist fight, for example, to like, it's like in our culture, but I don't think that they have any less anger The girls have any less anger than the boys. And the way that we're given permission to manifest that is different, I think, in society. So, and I'm Mr. Masculinity and Femininity. I'm like all about the masculine and the feminine are different and blah, blah, blah. But I think when it comes to an emotion, when it comes to sadness, anger, grief, we as humans across the board feel these things and express them in certain ways. And, I wonder within different even cultures, it comes down to what can women do with anger or what can men do with anger. I'm sure that's different too. So I think it's pretty societal, in my opinion.
And I think the relationship between men and women matters a lot too, because Tyler, when you were speaking, and maybe this is a question for you of like, you were saying, women kind of need to feel safe and connected and those things, but men, it's really important to feel respected. And so I think people don't equate respect with anger. Like if somebody is angry at me, maybe I don't feel so respected by them. And so I'm wondering like that role in that relationship too. And especially after betrayal, like is that part of the reason why an angry woman is so difficult because the man feels disrespected, even
Mm.
though he is the one in this typical scenario, right? He might be the one that did the betrayal in the first place. That's a huge disrespect. But like the anger, the reaction feels disrespectful. And I don't know, like I wonder like what the interplay is with that and like if there needs to be kind of a pause in order to provide safety or just like a different type of understanding. I don't know. I don't know if that is even a question that makes sense, but I was just wondering about that when you said that.
That's a great thought. I mean, I don't have all those answers. I have my own thoughts on it. Just with that question, maybe there is something to that with what you're saying. I also think for a lot of the couples that we work with, when a man is the one who's done the betraying and his wife is mad at him, a lot of times part of the problem is that the thing that got him into the trouble in the first place was the lack of his ability to hold his form under pressure and keep his values under pressure. And then his wife, who now is theoretically the most important person in the world in terms of what they think of him. In fact, in a lot of ways, he's trying to extract his value from his wife in the first place. And when he doesn't feel like he's getting told that he's enough or that he measures up or whatever, even though she doesn't have the answer for him, now when she comes back with disgust and disdain, it's not just a disrespect thing, it's also another answer to the question that he's been trying to extract from her, which is that you're enough. Now he's hearing, you're not enough, you'll never be enough.
Her anger triggers his shame.
Yeah, it hits the shame, which then shame robs anybody of being able to show empathy.
Yeah, but this is why betrayal recovery is so freaking difficult, because the reality is her anger is valid and needs to be there and protects her.
Right.
And I love the story you told earlier about Victor having the strength to sit there with you in it, because like that's ultimately what heals a relationship after betrayal. I was talking last week to a person who recently got betrayed, and he said, this is really hard because I have all this anger, and the very person that I want to process it with is the very person that like laid all these triggers in my lap. Like I want to I want to connect to this person that I love to process these things, and yet I just am so angry at them. So it's this really difficult thing. But that person who is betrayed, if they're work in recovery, like really truly work in recovery, they can be one of the best supports for that anger for their partner who is going through betrayal trauma.
Which Brannon, go along with that, when you look at rebuilding trust inside of a relationship for both men and women, part of the trust equation is shame resiliency on both sides.
Yeah.
And what Laura's story was a beautiful kind of illustration of her own shame resilience when she started to look into her anger and came to accept that part, even love that part, even be grateful for the parts of it that actually what it was trying to do for her, rather than get buried by the shame of like, you're crazy, you're addicted to anger, you're this, you're that. Like, when she was finally able to let go of all of that judgment and meet that anger with compassion and understanding and curiosity, which is shame resiliency, she was then able to go and express that in ways with her husband, where while he was working on his shame resiliency, he was able to lean in and go, oh, and without both sides of that shame resiliency, there's never that ability to have that interplay with one another.
Well, and also I think that it's important that your partner is not the place where you really do just process your anger just there. Like that you within yourself. I loved, Laura, your story about journaling. Like that's a great example of you taking the reins for your anger and figuring out how to process it, do something healthy with it. That's important. So, in fact, I call it stepping into the box of like you become aware of your anger. You know that part now, Laura, right? Like, and when she comes up, you recognize what she looks like, what she feels like, how she like what thoughts come, like all the things. Like, oh, hi, anger part. There you are. But then there's a next step of like, okay, what do I do to like allow this and feel it rather than just stuff it, right? And I call it stepping into the box, stepping into your anger box. Journaling's a great way. Playlists are a great way. Like certain music can help you process anger. Calling somebody who will hold space and allow you to vent, but also just hold that space and not amp up your anger and feed a victim story. So calling somebody, journaling, and then with anger, this is an interesting one. Actually getting aggressive can be helpful. So like, for example, I'll take my daughter to the glass recycling place and we'll throw glass in the bin and it feels so good. Like she loves it. Because we just like have fun just breaking this glass. But it's channeled into that bin where we're throwing the glass. Fire, like burn things in the fire if you need to. But you can do something to process this somatically, physically, like just like step into that. If it's channeled, then you can come back and say, okay, what am I really needing? What emotion is underneath this? Give yourself permission to step into that box. And it sounds like that's what you're doing, Laura. Correct?
Yes. And I think also some emotions do call us to act. Anger a lot of the times does call us to, hey, maybe you need to set a boundary here. Maybe you need to take a break here. Maybe you need to step out here. Maybe you need to speak up here. And so channeling that in that way too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And hearing those messages that it has for us, because it can allow us to act. I mean, I don't think I would be here talking about anger if my anger at people not letting women be angry was made me so angry, like, and that caused me to act and want to talk about it. And
I
so,
love that example.
Laura, we're getting to just a few minutes left here. Is there anything that we haven't hit on today that you wanted to make sure that you got to share or express today, or that we talked about?
No, I think just, it's when it comes to anger, it's not taking it as a narrative or an identity, because again, that was part of my story before. Like, I am angry, I am defensive, but I'm not. I get defensive, I get angry. But it's being curious about it. And a lot of the times there's a deeper story there. And it's worth asking, like, have I felt so unsafe that anger has had to show up for me? And what does that mean? And what do I have to change? And, what do I have to understand and learn? And so, yeah, that's the thing. Also, one last thing I did want to say to the audience out there is that a lot of the reason why my husband and I were able to do this shame resiliency work is because of your guys' work. So just telling the audience that y'all are in good hands with Tyler and Brannon. So keep at it.
Thanks, Laura. That's really nice of you.
We're-
Oh, go ahead, Tyler.
I was just going to say, we're actually really lucky because we have you now on the team. So it's kind of cool to have seen the journey that you've been on. This has been a couple of years now, several years now in the making, but you can hear it, the work that you've done. And now you're in a spot where you can not only have done a lot of the work for yourself, but you can turn around and help other people. And in a lot of ways, Reclaim Your Heart is getting the benefit of your expertise now. So we're glad to have you on the team.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's definitely a full circle moment for me, and I'm so thankful.
We need to wrap up, but quick story. I was working with a woman who found like really abruptly and shockingly found out about her husband's affair, and she came in and she's like smiling and she's like, I believe in repentance, I believe in forgiveness, like it's okay, everything's fine, this is fine. He can repent and I can forgive and life will go on, and smiles and I was kind of like, kind of listening, and she was hiding her anger. She was, it was like layers deep, because that anger I think was so connected to the pain of it all. And it was interesting to watch what happened because she held strong. Like she did not want to be angry at all about this betrayal. And it led to just depression. It led to just shutting down, of just like depressed about it, because she didn't allow herself to go through that part of the grief, the anger, to get to a place of peace. And I just want to reiterate that, for anybody, anger's okay. For a betrayed man or a betrayed woman, anger is important. And that part of the process is important. So I'm so glad you came on to bring awareness to this, Laura, and to talk about this, and give permission for people, especially women, that you can be angry and that's okay. So thank you, Laura. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
Say the same thing. Thank you. And thank you to our listeners. If this is meaningful or if this would benefit somebody that you know, please feel free to share it. And until next time, keep on keeping on.